never thought I'd become a servant in my own home, but that's exactly what happened, so slowly and subtly that I didn't even notice until it was too late. My name is Margaret Chen, though everyone used to call me Maggie. I'm 68 years old, and for the past 3 years I've been living like a stranger in the house my husband and I built together. It started 2 years after my Richard died. Heart attack, sudden, devastating. One morning he was drinking his coffee and reading the newspaper, making plans to finally retire and travel. By that evening, he was gone. Just like that, 42 years of marriage reduced to a death certificate and a funeral program. My son, Victor, seemed devastated. He and his wife, Stehphanie, insisted I shouldn't be alone in this big house, that they'd move in to take care of me. I was touched. I thought it meant they cared. I thought it meant I still had family. I was so desperate not to be alone in this house full of memories that I didn't see what was really happening. At first, it was small things. Mom, since you're home all day anyway, would you mind doing the laundry? Mom, we're both so busy with work. Could you handle dinner tonight? Mom, the house is looking a bit dusty. Maybe you could tidy up while we're out. I didn't mind. I'd always been active, always kept busy. Richard used to joke that I couldn't sit still for 5 minutes. Cooking, cleaning, taking care of the house. It gave me purpose. It made me feel useful. It made me feel less alone. But gradually, the requests became demands. The gratitude disappeared. The please and thank you stopped coming. And somewhere along the line, I stopped being Victor's mother and became the hired help. Margaret, Stehphanie would shout from upstairs. She'd stopped calling me Mom about a year ago. Margaret, I need my clothes pressed for my meeting tomorrow. Not, could you please help me? Not, I'd appreciate it if you had time. Just orders, barked like I was the maid. And if I didn't move fast enough, if I made any small mistake, there would be complaints, loud public complaints about how incompetent I was, how I couldn't do anything right. Victor never defended me. My son, the boy I'd carried for 9 months, the child I'd raised, the young man I'd put through college by working 2 jobs after his father's accounting business hit hard times. He'd just sit there, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to hear his wife belittle his mother. Sometimes, late at night when they were out with friends or asleep in what used to be the master bedroom, my bedroom, mine and Richard's, I'd sit in the small room they'd given me, my own sewing room, now barely big enough for a twin bed and a dresser, and wonder how it had come to this. I'd look at the photos I'd salvaged before Stehphanie redecorated and threw most of my things into storage. Richard and me on our wedding day, both so young and full of hope. Victor as a baby, as a toddler, graduating high school, college. Where had that sweet boy gone? When had he turned into this cold stranger who looked at me with barely concealed annoyance? The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. I remember because it was Richard's birthday. He would have been 70. I'd made his favorite meal, pot roast with roasted vegetables, just the way he liked. I'd even made his favorite apple pie from scratch. I set the table carefully, using the good china we'd received as wedding gifts. I'd found a candle and placed it in the center, along with a small framed photo of Richard. It wasn't a party, just a quiet remembrance. I thought maybe Victor would want to remember his father with me. I was placing the last dish on the table when they came home. Victor was laughing at something on his phone. Stehphanie was complaining about traffic. Neither of them noticed the elaborate meal I'd spent all day preparing. "Dinner's ready," I said softly. "I made something special. It's your father's—" "God, Margaret, not this again," Stehphanie interrupted, not even looking up from her phone. "We already ate. We told you we had dinner plans with the Harrisons." "But I spent all day—" My voice trailed off as I looked at all the food, already growing cold. Well, that's not our problem, is it? She finally looked at the table and wrinkled her nose. And seriously, the good china? What were you thinking? Those plates are worth a fortune. What if you'd broken one? They're my plates, mine and Richard's, wedding gifts from... Actually, Victor spoke up for the first time, his voice cold. Technically, everything in this house belongs to me now, Mother. Dad left it all to me, remember? The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at my son, this stranger wearing my child's face, and felt something crack inside me. That's not... Your father would never... Wouldn't he? Victor smiled, and there was something cruel in it. I'm his son, his only child. Why would he leave his estate to his elderly wife when he had a son to carry on the family legacy? Everything is in my name now, Mother. This house, the investments, everything. You're here because I allow it. Don't forget that. I wanted to scream that he was lying. I wanted to pull out the will, the documents, prove that my son was wrong. But I was so shocked, so hurt by the casual cruelty in his voice that I couldn't speak. I just stood there, tears running down my face while they walked past me and up the stairs. I heard their bedroom door close. I heard them laughing at something, their voices muffled but cheerful, as if they hadn't just broken my heart. And I stood there in the dining room, surrounded by my husband's favorite meal growing cold, and realized that I had allowed myself to become invisible in my own home. That night, lying in my small bed in my small room, I made a decision. I would play along. I would let them think I was just the poor, helpless old woman they believed me to be. But I would also remember something very important, something my son either forgot or never knew. Richard and I had built this house together, yes, but the deed, the actual ownership, that was more complicated than Victor realized. My husband had been a careful man, methodical. He'd planned for every contingency, and he'd made sure I'd always be protected. I just had to be patient. I had to let them show me exactly who they were, and when the time came, when they'd revealed their true natures completely, then I would act. My sister Grace had warned me. Maggie, she'd said at Richard's funeral, don't let them take advantage. Don't let grief make you vulnerable. I dismissed her concerns then. But Grace had always been the practical one, the one who saw people clearly. I should have listened. But it wasn't too late. I might have been playing the victim for 2 years, but I was Richard Chen's wife. I hadn't survived 42 years of marriage, raised a child, managed a household, and navigated life's challenges by being weak. I'd just forgotten my strength for a while. They wanted me to be helpless? I'd show them helpless. They wanted me to be dependent? I'd play dependent. But all the while, I'd be watching, documenting, preparing, because my son and his wife had forgotten something very important. Underestimating someone is the fastest way to lose to them. And they had greatly underestimated Margaret Chen. Over the following months, things got worse, much worse. It was as if, having finally said the cruel part out loud, that everything belonged to him and I was only there by his grace, Victor felt liberated to treat me however he wanted. The house had 4 bedrooms. I was moved out of my small room into what used to be a storage closet that barely fit a single bed. We need the extra space, Tiffany explained, though I noticed that room became her home office, where she spent most afternoons online shopping and video chatting with friends. My meals were regulated. At your age, you don't need as much food, Tiffany informed me, as if she were a nutritionist rather than a former dental receptionist. I was given portions half the size of theirs, and if I finished everything on my plate and looked hungry, Victor would make comments about teaching old people gratitude for what they have. The cleaning intensified. They'd always had me do housework, but now it became punitive. Tiffany would deliberately make messes, spilling drinks, leaving wet towels on the floor, tracking mud through the house, and then berate me for not cleaning fast enough. "This is unacceptable," she'd shout, pointing to a stain on the carpet that I'd watched her create with red wine the night before. "I work all day and come home to this filth? What do you even do all day, Margaret?" What did I do? I cooked 3 meals a day for people who barely acknowledged the food. I cleaned a 4-bedroom house top to bottom. I did everyone's laundry, ironing Victor's shirts with precision because he'd yell if there was a crease. I maintained the yard, the garden that Richard and I had planted together, though Tiffany had already started talking about hiring a real landscaper to fix what you've ruined. I also started documenting every cruel word, every unreasonable demand, every instance of being treated like a servant rather than a family member. I kept a journal hidden in the bottom of my single drawer of belongings, writing down dates, times, and exact quotes. I'd learned something from Richard: always keep records. The lowest point came one evening in late November. I was in the kitchen washing dishes from dinner. They had friends over and I'd been sent to eat alone in my room, when I heard laughter in the living room. Curious, I dried my hands and moved closer, staying in the darkened hallway where I could hear but not be seen. "So it's true then," a woman's voice, Linda Harrison, one of Tiffany's friends. "She actually lives here like your maid?" "Not like our maid." Tiffany's laugh was sharp and unkind. "She is our maid. Rent-free, of course, but she earns her keep." "Tiff, that's your mother-in-law." Linda sounded shocked, but also fascinated. "Victor, doesn't that bother you?" My son's response made my blood run cold. "Why would it? She needs somewhere to live. We need help around the house. It's a practical arrangement. Besides, what else is she going to do? She's old, she has no skills, no income. She should be grateful we're willing to take care of her." "Take care of her?" Another voice, Tom Harrison. "Sounds like she takes care of you." "Well, that's the modern family dynamic, isn't it? Everyone contributes what they can. She can't contribute financially, so she contributes in other ways." The group laughed. They actually laughed, like the systematic degradation of an elderly woman was amusing dinner party conversation. I stood there in that dark hallway, listening to my son reduce me to unpaid labor, and felt something inside me harden. Not break. I'd been broken before. This was different. This was crystallization, clarification. This was the moment when I stopped hoping things would get better and started planning for what came next. But the next morning brought a new horror I hadn't anticipated. I was in the kitchen early, as usual, preparing breakfast. Victor came down first, already dressed in his expensive suit, checking his phone. He poured himself coffee from the pot I'd made, didn't acknowledge me, and was heading toward the door when Tiffany appeared. "Victor, wait. We need to talk about something." She glanced at me, then back at him. "Actually, let's talk in the car, away from, you know." I kept my head down, focusing on scrambling eggs, but my ears were sharp. They thought they were being quiet, but the door didn't close all the way. I heard Tiffany's voice, lower but still audible. "We need to do something about her, permanently." My hand stilled on the spatula. "What do you mean?" Victor asked. "I mean, she's dragging us down. Tom and Linda thought it was weird last night, I could tell. Other people are starting to ask questions. Plus, have you seen how much she eats? How much the utility bills have gone up with her here? She's costing us money, Victor." "So what do you suggest?" Victor asked. "A nursing home or one of those low-income senior apartments. She gets Social Security, right? That could cover a cheap place somewhere. We could visit occasionally, look like good family, but she wouldn't be here anymore." Silence. I held my breath, waiting for my son to defend me, to remember that I was his mother. "It's a thought," he said finally, "but we'd have to do it right. Can't look like we're abandoning her. Need to make it seem like it's for her own good, for her safety or health or something." "Leave that to me," Tiffany said. "I'll start researching places. The cheaper, the better. We can say we're being fiscally responsible with her limited resources or whatever." I heard the car doors close, the engine start, the sound of them driving away. I stood there with a spatula in my hand, eggs burning on the stove, and realized that I'd been naive even in my new awareness. I thought they just wanted me as free labor. I hadn't realized they were actively planning to dispose of me entirely. That afternoon, while they were at work, I went to my storage closet room and dug out an old shoebox from the back of my minuscule closet space. Inside was a manila envelope that Richard had given me years ago. "Just in case," he'd said, kissing my forehead. "I hope you never need it, but if you do, everything's in here." I'd tucked it away and forgotten about it, trusting that my son would take care of me, that family meant something. Now I opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were documents, legal documents, the original deed to the house, Richard's actual will, not whatever story Victor had been telling, bank statements showing accounts I didn't know existed, letters from Richard's attorney, Mr. Howard Kim, with instructions on what to do if certain circumstances arose, and a handwritten note from my husband. "Maggie, if you're reading this, something has gone very wrong. I'm sorry I'm not there to protect you, but I made sure you'd be protected anyway. Everything is yours, my love. Everything. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Call Howard immediately. He knows what to do." I sat on my small bed in my storage closet room, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's love and foresight, and I cried. Not from sadness this time, but from relief. And then, with tears still drying on my face, I smiled. Victor and Tiffany wanted to play games? Fine. But they were playing a game where they didn't know the rules, and I was holding all the cards. It was time to make my move. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I left the house without asking permission. I told Victor and Tiffany I was going to the doctor, a routine checkup, I said meekly, and could I please have bus fare because I didn't want to inconvenience them with a ride. Tiffany rolled her eyes but tossed a $10 bill at me like I was a beggar. Victor didn't even look up from his phone. Instead of going to the doctor, I took 2 buses across town to the office of Howard Kim, my late husband's attorney. I'd called ahead using the neighbor's phone. They'd canceled the landline and never gave me access to a cell phone, claiming I was too old to figure out technology, and Howard had agreed to see me immediately. His secretary looked shocked when I walked in. I must have been quite a sight, a small, elderly woman in worn clothing, carrying a battered purse, looking like someone's poor grandmother, which, I suppose, was exactly what I'd become in appearance. Howard was different. He stood when I entered, his face a mixture of concern and anger. "Mrs. Chen, Maggie, my God, what has happened to you?" I'd known Howard for 20 years. He'd handled all of Richard's business affairs, had been at our dinner table countless times, had bounced a young Victor on his knee. The last time he'd seen me was at Richard's funeral, when I'd been composed, well-dressed, the dignified widow. Now I was this. "Sit down, please," he said, guiding me to a chair. "Can I get you anything? Water? Tea? Have you eaten today?" The concern in his voice almost broke me. I hadn't realized how starved I'd been for simple human kindness. "I'm fine," I managed. "I need your help." "Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the slow degradation, the transformation from family member to unpaid servant. I told him about the cruel comments, the threats of nursing homes, the conversation I'd overheard about disposing of me. I showed him my journal with its careful documentation of abuse. Howard's face grew darker with each revelation. When I finished, his hands were clenched into fists on his desk. That ungrateful little... He caught himself. Forgive me, but Victor knows better. I went over the will with him personally after Richard died. He knows the terms. What terms? I asked. Victor said everything belongs to him now. The house, the investments, everything. Howard's eyebrows shot up. He said, "What? Maggie, that's not just untrue, it's deliberately fraudulent. Your husband left very specific instructions." He pulled out a thick file folder. Everything, and I mean everything, was left to you. The house, all accounts, all investments. You are the sole beneficiary of Richard's estate. The room tilted slightly. But Victor said... Victor lied, Howard said bluntly. And if he's been telling people he owns the house, if he's been making decisions about property that belongs to you, that's fraud. That's elder abuse. That's potentially criminal. I absorbed this, feeling validation and fury in equal measure. Why would he do this? Howard continued. The will does include provisions for Victor. After your passing, everything goes to him. Richard wanted to ensure you were taken care of first, that you'd never be dependent on anyone. It appears Victor decided he didn't want to wait. What can I do? Howard leaned forward. Several things. First, we need to establish your legal right to the property immediately. I'll file the necessary documentation with the county tomorrow. Second, we need to address the fraud. Third, he paused. Third, Mrs. Chen, we need to get you out of that house safely. If they're talking about institutionalizing you, if they're already treating you this way, confronting them directly could be dangerous. No, my voice was firm. I'm not running away. That house is mine. Richard and I built it together, and I won't be driven out of it by my own son's greed. Then we need to be strategic. We need to gather evidence of what they've done, document the fraud, and then we hit them with everything at once. Legal action, property rights, everything. But Maggie, you need to promise me you'll be careful. If they realize you know the truth, they won't, I assured him. They think I'm a helpless old woman who doesn't know any better. They think I'm too weak, too confused, too grateful for their generosity to question anything. Let them keep thinking that. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Howard would file quiet documentation establishing my ownership without alerting Victor. I would continue documenting the abuse while acting the part of the submissive servant. We'd install a hidden camera in the common areas, legally, since it was my house, to capture evidence. And when we had enough, we'd spring the trap. There's one more thing, Howard said as I was preparing to leave. Your sister Grace called me last month. She said she'd been trying to reach you and couldn't get through. She's worried about you. Grace, my sister, my ally, the practical one who'd seen through from the start. They don't let me have a phone, I admitted, and they screened all the calls on the landline before they disconnected it. Howard's jaw tightened. That's isolation, classic abuse tactic. Here, he pulled out a small cell phone from his drawer, prepaid. Keep it hidden. My number is programmed in along with Grace's and emergency services. If anything happens, if you feel unsafe at any moment, you call immediately. Promise me. I took the phone, feeling its weight like an anchor to the outside world. I promise. And Maggie, this isn't your fault. You loved your son. You trusted him. That's what good mothers do. He's the one who broke that trust. He's the one who chose to become someone unrecognizable. Don't let him make you feel guilty for having a heart." I left Howard's office with the phone hidden in my bag, documents proving my ownership secured in his safe, and for the first time in 2 years, something I'd almost forgotten: hope. On the bus ride home, I called Grace from my new phone. "Maggie, is that you? Oh, thank God. I've been so worried." "I'm okay, or I will be. Grace, I need your help." "Anything. What do you need?" "A place to stay, just for a little while, when this all comes to a head. Can I come to you?" "Of course. But Maggie, what's going on? What's happened?" "I'll explain everything soon. But Grace, you were right. About everything. I should have listened to you 2 years ago." "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry, but we're going to fix this. I promise. Whatever you need, I'm here." I wiped away tears as the bus pulled up to my stop. "I know. I love you. I love you too. Be careful." I got off the bus 3 blocks from the house and walked slowly, composing myself. By the time I reached the front door, I'd transformed back into meek, helpless Margaret, the woman who wouldn't say boo to a goose. Victor was home early, sitting in the living room, my living room, with a beer and the television remote. "Where have you been?" he demanded, not bothering to look at me. "Doctor appointment, remember?" I kept my voice small, apologetic. "Sorry it took so long. The bus was delayed." "Whatever. Dinner better be ready on time. We have people coming over." "Of course," I said, hurrying to the kitchen. "Right away." But inside, I was smiling, because in my pocket was a phone connecting me to the outside world. In a lawyer's safe was proof that I owned everything they thought was theirs. And in my mind was a plan. They wanted helpless. They'll get helpless. Right up until the moment I wasn't. The breaking point came 2 weeks later on a cold December evening. The weather had turned bitter, with rain pounding against the windows and wind howling around the eaves of the house. My house, I kept reminding myself, though I still hadn't revealed that truth. I'd spent the day, as usual, cleaning, cooking, and being invisible. Tiffany had friends over for her book club, though I'd never seen them read a single book, just drink wine and gossip. And I'd been running up and down the stairs, serving food and drinks like a servant at a Victorian estate. "Margaret!" Tiffany's shrill voice cut through the laughter. "The bathroom upstairs needs attention. Someone spilled wine on the floor." I climbed the stairs slowly, my knees aching from the constant up and down. In the bathroom, I found red wine splattered not just on the floor, but on the walls, the towels, even the ceiling somehow. It was clearly deliberate, a test to see how far they could push me. As I was on my hands and knees scrubbing the floor, I heard Tiffany's voice from the hallway. "Honestly, I don't know why we keep her around. She's getting slower every day. Did you see how long it took her to bring up those appetizers? Why don't you just get rid of her? Send her to a home or something." "We're working on it. Victor's been researching the legal requirements. Turns out it's harder than you'd think to institutionalize someone, even when it's clearly for their own good. She'd have to be declared incompetent or something." My hands stilled on the floor. Declared incompetent. They were planning to have me deemed mentally unfit so they could take complete control of everything I owned. That's when I understood how carefully they'd planned this. It wasn't just cruelty or greed. It was a calculated scheme to steal everything Richard had left me. I finished cleaning the bathroom in silence, my mind racing. When I came back downstairs, the book club was wrapping up. I played my part perfectly, meek, confused, shuffling. I even called Tiffany by the wrong name, something I'd never done before, just to add to their narrative. "See what I mean?" Tiffany whispered to her friends, not quietly enough. "She called me Denise. Who's Denise? It's getting worse." After they left, Victor called me into the living room. Tiffany sat beside him on the couch, and the way they were positioned, united, formal, told me this was a prepared confrontation. "Mother, sit down." Victor pointed to a hard wooden chair they'd placed opposite the couch. I sat, keeping my head down, my shoulders hunched. "We need to talk about your living situation," Victor began. "Tiffany and I have been discussing it, and we think it's time for a change." I said nothing, just twisted my hands in my lap. "You're not getting any younger," Tiffany added, her voice dripping with false concern. "We've noticed you're having trouble keeping up with things, forgetting tasks, getting confused. We're worried about you." "I'm fine," I said softly. "I'm sorry if I've disappointed you." "It's not about disappointment, it's about reality. You need more care than we can provide. We found a wonderful facility, a senior living center with full-time staff. It would be much better for you." "You mean a nursing home?" My voice was barely a whisper. "A care facility," Tiffany corrected, "where you'd be safe, looked after by professionals." "But this is my home," I said, letting my voice break. "I don't want to leave. Please." "Mother, you don't really have a choice." Victor's voice hardened. "We've made the decision. We've already put down a deposit. You'll move next week." "But," I looked between them, playing the confused old woman to perfection. "But what about my things, my memories of your father?" "We'll keep some photos for you," Tiffany said dismissively, "but you won't need much. The facility provides everything." "Next week?" My breath came faster, real panic mixed with performance. "That's so soon." "That's the point. Rip the Band-Aid off. You'll adjust." That night, lying in my storage closet room, I took out the hidden phone and called Howard Kim. Despite the late hour, he answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Kim, what's wrong?" I told him about the plan to have me declared incompetent, about the nursing home deposit, about the timeline. "They're moving next week, Howard. We're out of time." "No," Howard said firmly. "They're out of time. I'll file an emergency injunction tomorrow morning. We'll move up our timeline. Can you be out of the house by Friday?" "Yes, Grace is expecting me. But Howard, I want them to show themselves completely. I want everyone to see exactly who they are." "What do you have in mind?" I told him my plan. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "It's risky," Howard said finally. "If they become violent—" "I'll have the phone. I'll call police if needed. But they're cowards, both of them. They'll fold." "All right. Friday morning, 10 a.m. I'll have everything ready. But Maggie, at the first sign of danger—" "I'll call, I promise." The next 3 days, I played my role perfectly. Confused, forgetful, incompetent. I let Tiffany catch me staring blankly at the kitchen cabinets, supposedly unable to remember where the dishes went. I pretended to forget conversations. I shuffled more, moved slower, made myself seem as mentally declining as possible. All the while, I was packing, not obviously, just the most important things, smuggled out bit by bit in my purse when I claimed I was going to the store. Photos of Richard, my mother's jewelry, documents I'd kept hidden. Grace came by one afternoon while they were at work, and we loaded 3 boxes of memories into her car. "Are you sure about this?" Grace asked, worry etched on her face. "Completely sure. It ends Friday."
Thursday night, Victor and Tiffany went out to celebrate with friends. Last night of freedom before we're stuck with the goodbye drama, I heard Tiffany say as they left. I used their absence to pack my final bag. Then I called Emma, my elderly neighbor, who'd witnessed some of the abuse through the thin walls of our houses. Emma, I need a favor, and I need you to call someone for me tomorrow morning. Friday dawned cold and clear. I woke up early, dressed in my best outfit, a dress I'd hidden from Tiffany's redecorating, and waited. At 9:30 a.m., I heard Victor and Tiffany coming downstairs, arguing about something trivial. At 9:45, there was a knock at the door. Victor answered it, annoyed. "Yes?" "Mr. Victor Chen," a professional voice, "I'm serving you with legal documents. You've been named in a civil suit regarding property fraud and elder abuse." I heard Tiffany gasp, heard Victor sputter. "What? There must be a mistake." "No mistake, sir. You're required to appear in court next week. Have a good day." I waited in the kitchen, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. Victor stormed into the kitchen, his face purple with rage. "What did you do?" I looked up at my son, and for the first time in 2 years, I stopped pretending. "I stopped letting you steal from me," I said clearly, my voice strong.
The transformation in Victor's and Tiffany's expressions would have been comical if the situation weren't so serious. Shock, confusion, then rapidly mounting fury warred across their faces. "What are you talking about?" Tiffany recovered first, her voice shrill. "Steal from you? You don't have anything. Everything here belongs to Victor." "Does it?" I stood up, and it felt like shedding a costume I'd been wearing for years. My posture straightened, my voice strengthened. "Tell me, Victor, when your father died, did you actually read his will, or did you just assume everything came to you?" Victor's face had gone from purple to pale. Of course I read it. Dad left me the estate, the house, the investments. He left you nothing while I'm alive." I pulled out copies of documents from my pocket. Howard Kim had prepared them for this moment. Everything your father owned was left to me. The house, every account, every investment. You were named as the secondary beneficiary to inherit only after my death. "That's not possible," Tiffany said. Her voice had lost its certainty. "Show me." I spread the papers on the kitchen table, the will clear as day, the deed to the house with my name alone on the title, bank statements showing accounts worth far more than they'd realized, all in my name. "You lied," I said, looking at my son. "For 2 years you've been lying. You told me everything belonged to you. You treated me like a servant in my own home. You isolated me from my sister, from my friends. You planned to have me declared incompetent so you could take control of assets that were never yours." "Now, wait just a minute," Victor started. "No." My voice cut through like a knife. You wait, and you listen, because I've been silent for 2 years, and now it's your turn to hear me." I pulled out my journal, the one I'd been keeping secretly. I have documentation of everything, every cruel word, every degrading task, every time you treated me like I was worth less than nothing. I have witnesses. Emma next door heard the shouting, saw you literally working me like an unpaid servant. I have the testimony of the people you bragged to about your arrangement with me. Tiffany grabbed for the papers. "These could be fake. You could have made all this up." "They're not fake," a new voice said from the doorway. Howard Kim walked in, followed by another man in a police uniform. "I'm Howard Kim, Mrs. Chen's attorney and executor of her late husband's estate. These documents are genuine, filed with the county and verified by multiple agencies. And this is Detective Mills. He's here because what you've done isn't just morally reprehensible, it's criminal." Victor and Tiffany both went silent, staring at the detective. Elder abuse is a crime. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult is a crime. Fraud is a crime. Mr. Chen, you've been telling people you own this house. You've been making financial decisions about property that doesn't belong to you. That's fraud. "I'm his mother," Victor finally found his voice. I assumed it was a misunderstanding." "Was it a misunderstanding when you planned to have me declared mentally incompetent, when you created fake incidents to build a case of dementia, when you found a nursing home and planned to institutionalize me against my will? Those aren't misunderstandings. Those are calculated crimes." "We were trying to help you." Tiffany's voice rose hysterically. "You were confused, forgetful." "I was never confused. I pretended to be. I needed to see exactly how far you'd go. I needed evidence of your intentions, and you gave it to me, Tiffany. You talked about it openly with your friends. Emma heard it all through the walls." "Mrs. Chen," Harwood said gently, "what would you like to do?" I looked at my son, this stranger wearing my child's face. I thought about the little boy he'd been, the young man full of promise. I thought about the moment he'd transformed into this cruel, greedy person, and I made my decision. "I want you out of my house," I said to Victor, "both of you, today, now." "You can't do that," Tiffany shrieked. "We live here. Our stuff is here." "Your stuff is in my house," I corrected. "You have 2 hours to pack essentials. The rest can be collected later under supervision. If you're not gone in 2 hours, Detective Mills will arrest you both for trespassing." "Mother, please." Victor's voice cracked, and for a moment he almost sounded like my son again. "Please, can't we talk about this? I made mistakes, I know, but I'm still your son." "No," I said, and my voice was steady even as my heart broke. "A son doesn't do what you did. A son doesn't lie to his mother, abuse her, plan to rob her of her freedom and her home. I gave you life, Victor. I raised you, loved you, sacrificed for you, and you repaid me by treating me like garbage in my own home. I will never forgive that." "But where will we go?" Tiffany's voice was desperate now. "We don't have money for first and last month's rent somewhere else. We put everything into—" She stopped, realizing what she was about to admit. "Into what?" I asked quietly. "Into assuming you'd inherit soon? Into spending money you didn't have because you thought this house and all its assets belonged to you?" Silence. "That's not my problem. You're adults. You have jobs. Figure it out, the way millions of people do without stealing from their elderly mothers." "Mrs. Chen," Detective Mills said, "are you pressing charges? Based on what I've heard and the evidence your attorney showed me, there are multiple crimes here." I hesitated. Pressing charges meant Victor would have a criminal record. It could mean jail time. He was still my son, no matter what he'd done. But then I thought about other elderly people, other vulnerable adults who might fall victim to similar abuse. I thought about the 2 years of degradation, the systematic cruelty, the cold calculation behind their actions. "Yes," I said finally, "I'm pressing charges for all of it. The fraud, the abuse, the attempted exploitation, all of it." Victor's face crumbled. "Mom, please." "Don't call me that. You lost the right to call me that when you decided I was worthless. Detective Mills, they have 2 hours to pack and leave. Then I want this house secured. I want locks changed. I want a restraining order."
"Consider it done, Mrs. Chen," the detective said. I turned to Howard, "And I want to change my will. Everything I have goes to my sister Grace. Victor gets nothing, not 1 penny." "Understood," Howard said. "I'll have the papers drawn up today." "You can't do this," Tiffany screamed. "This is our home. We've lived here for 2 years." "You've lived in my house for 2 years, rent-free while treating me like a servant. That ends today. Pack your things. You have 2 hours." I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them standing there in shock. In the living room, I could hear Tiffany starting to cry, Victor trying to argue with the detective, but I didn't look back. Grace was waiting in her car outside, just as we'd planned. I walked out with my single bag of belongings. Everything else was already at her house, moved secretly over the past week. "How do you feel?" Grace asked as we got in the car. I thought about it. "Free," I said finally. "For the first time in 2 years, I feel free." As we drove away, I saw Victor and Tiffany through the window frantically packing, their faces mirrors of shock and disbelief. They'd underestimated a helpless old woman. They'd forgotten that Richard Chen's wife was strong, capable, and not to be trifled with. And they'd just learned that lesson the hardest way possible.
The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, and I faced each day with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Grace's house became my temporary sanctuary, though I visited my own home daily with Howard or the police to document the condition Victor and Tiffany had left it in. What I found broke my heart all over again, but differently this time. They hadn't just lived in my house, they desecrated it. Family photos were thrown in the trash. Richard's study had been ransacked, papers everywhere, as if they'd been searching for hidden assets. My mother's china, the set I'd carefully preserved for 40 years, was chipped and broken, used carelessly and put away wrong. In the master bedroom, I found something that made me call Detective Mills immediately. File folders labeled evidence of incompetence, filled with fabricated incident reports, dates and times of supposed episodes of confusion, forgetfulness, even allegations I'd become violent or unresponsive. All lies, all carefully documented to build a legal case for having me declared mentally unfit. "This is textbook elder abuse," Detective Mills said, photographing everything. "Systematic, calculated, with clear intent to defraud. Your attorney was right to push for the harshest charges." The criminal case moved forward quickly. Victor and Tiffany retained a lawyer, using what money I couldn't imagine, who immediately tried to paint them as misunderstood children, trying to care for a difficult elderly mother. My clients were acting out of concern, their attorney, a sharp-faced man named Gregory Slate, argued at the first hearing. Mrs. Chen was displaying signs of dementia. They documented these incidents out of legitimate worry for her well-being. Howard stood up, calm and devastating. "Your Honor, if I may, present Exhibit A, a video recording from Mrs. Chen's hidden camera, legally installed in her own home, showing the defendants discussing how to fabricate evidence of mental incompetence. Would you like me to play it?" The courtroom went silent. Tiffany had gone white. Victor was staring at the table. "The defendants didn't know about this recording," Howard continued. "In it, they explicitly discuss creating fake incidents, building a false narrative, and using it to gain control of Mrs. Chen's assets. This wasn't concern, Your Honor. This was premeditated fraud." Judge Anderson, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at Victor and Tiffany with undisguised disgust. "I'd like to see that recording, Mr. Kim." The video was damning. There they were, sitting in my living room, casually discussing how to manufacture evidence that I was losing my mind. Tiffany suggesting they start hiding things and then finding them in wrong places. Victor agreeing to start telling people I was getting worse, both of them laughing about how easy it would be to convince a judge. "They treat her like a servant," Tiffany said on the video. "Everyone can see she's declining. A few more documented incidents and we can have her declared incompetent. Then everything becomes ours legally. And she'll be in a facility where she can't contradict us," Victor added. When the video ended, Judge Anderson's expression was ice. "Mr. Slate, does your client wish to change their plea?" Victor and Tiffany huddled with their lawyer. I watched my son's shoulders shake, whether from crying or rage, I couldn't tell. Finally, Slate stood. My clients would like to discuss a plea arrangement." "I'm sure they would," Judge Anderson said dryly. "Mrs. Chen, you're the victim here. What outcome would you like to see?" I stood up, feeling every eye in the courtroom on me. "Your Honor, I want justice, not just for me, but for every elderly person who's been abused by family members who saw them as an inconvenient or as an obstacle to an inheritance. I want my son and his wife to face the full legal consequences of their actions." "Mom, please." Victor tried to stand, but his lawyer pulled him back down. "I also want every penny they spent that wasn't theirs returned. They lived rent-free in my house for 2 years. They used utilities, food, everything without paying. I want restitution." "That seems more than fair," Judge Anderson said. "Mr. Slate, your clients are facing multiple felony charges: elder abuse, fraud, attempted financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit fraud. Mrs. Chen has video evidence, witness testimony, and your client's own documented false statements. What exactly do you have to offer in a plea deal?" The plea negotiations took another week. Finally, we reached an agreement. Victor and Tiffany would plead guilty to reduce charges, serve probation and community service, and pay full restitution. They'd also be required to attend counseling and would have permanent restraining orders keeping them away from me. Most important to me, the guilty pleas would be public record. Anyone searching their names would find what they'd done. Future employers, friends, anyone. They'd carry this shame forever. But parallel to the criminal case was another battle. Victor's claim that even if he'd acted badly, he was still entitled to live in the house because he was family. "Your Honor," Gregory Slate argued in civil court, "my client may have made mistakes in how he treated his mother, but that doesn't change the fact that she's elderly and alone. She invited them to live with her. She welcomed their help. Surely she doesn't intend to leave her only son homeless." I almost laughed at the audacity. Howard didn't laugh. He was coldly efficient. Mrs. Chen's son and daughter-in-law weren't helping her. They were exploiting her. They turned her into unpaid domestic labor while planning to have her declared incompetent and institutionalized. The idea that they have any right to continued access to her property is absurd. "Mr. Chen is her only child," Slate pressed. "Her only family besides her sister. Surely some reconciliation." "No." I stood up before Howard could stop me. "Your Honor, may I speak?" The judge nodded. "My son chose to see me as an obstacle to his inheritance rather than as his mother. He made that choice every day for 2 years. Every time he let his wife belittle me, every time he barked orders at me, every time he discussed plans to rob me of my freedom and my home. Those were choices, and choices have consequences." I looked directly at Victor. "I gave you life. I raised you. I loved you unconditionally, and you repaid that by treating me like I was worthless. You don't get to undo that now because facing the consequences is uncomfortable. You are not welcome in my home. You are not welcome in my life. And when I die, you will inherit nothing because I've changed my will to leave everything to organizations that help abused elders.
You wanted my death to make you rich? Instead, my death will help prevent other children from doing to their parents what you did to me." Victor was openly crying now. Tiffany was staring at me with naked hatred. I didn't care. I'd said my truth. Judge Anderson ruled swiftly. Victor and Tiffany had no claim to the property. They were to have no contact with me. If they violated the restraining order, they'd face immediate arrest. Furthermore, the judge added, I'm ordering the full transcripts and video evidence to be made available to Adult Protective Services. What happened here should be studied and used to train social workers and law enforcement in identifying elder abuse. My story would help others. That mattered more than anything.
Moving back into my house felt like reclaiming stolen territory. Grace came with me, along with Howard and even Emma from next door, and we spent the first weekend cleaning out every trace of Victor and Tiffany's occupation. "This can go," I said, pointing to the expensive leather sofa they'd bought and stuck me with the bill for. "All of it. I want my old furniture back from storage." We donated their belongings to charity. They had 30 days to collect anything they wanted to keep, but they never came. Pride, probably, or shame. Either way, their expensive clothes, their gadgets, their attempts at sophistication all went to people who'd actually appreciate them. I had the house deep cleaned professionally. I had the locks changed. I had a security system installed. And slowly, room by room, I transformed it from the place of my degradation back into the home Richard and I had built together. Richard's study became a study again, not Victor's home office. I retrieved his books from storage, his favorite chair, the photos of us from throughout our marriage. I sat in that room one afternoon, surrounded by memories, and talked to my late husband. "I'm sorry it took me so long," I said to his photo. "I'm sorry I let them do what they did, but it's over now. I'm taking care of everything, just like you knew I could." The master bedroom became mine again. I bought new bedding. The set Victor and Tiffany had used went straight into the trash, and painted the walls the soft blue Richard had always said reminded him of my eyes. I retrieved my mother's quilt from storage and spread it over the bed. I put our wedding photo on the nightstand. The small storage closet they forced me into became what it had always been meant to be, storage. I couldn't bring myself to put anything in there yet. The humiliation of those months was still too fresh. But the house was mine again, and that was what mattered. Grace stayed with me for the first month. "Just until you're settled," she said, but we both knew she was worried I'd struggle alone. She needn't have worried. Once the legal battles were over, once Victor and Tiffany were permanently gone, I felt stronger than I had in years. "You're different," Grace said one morning over coffee. "You're you again, the Maggie I remember." "I forgot who I was for a while," I admitted. "I let grief make me weak. I let loneliness make me vulnerable. But I remembered." "What are you going to do now?" Grace asked. "This house is so big for one person. Are you going to be lonely here?" I'd been thinking about that. The house had 6 bedrooms, the master, the guest room Grace was using, Richard's study, and 3 others that sat mostly empty even when Victor and Tiffany lived here. It was too much space for one elderly woman. But then I remembered something Tiffany had said during one of her cruel rants. What would an old woman do with all this space anyway? And I knew exactly what I would do. I called Howard that afternoon. "I want to turn the house into a shelter for elderly people escaping family abuse. Can we do that?" There was a pause. Then, "Maggie, that's brilliant. Yes, we can absolutely do that. We need to set it up as a nonprofit, get licensed, meet safety requirements, but it's doable." Over the next 3 months, I threw myself into the project with an energy I didn't know I still had. Howard helped me navigate the legal requirements. Grace helped me prepare rooms and develop intake procedures. She'd been a social worker before retirement, and her expertise was invaluable. I used some of Richard's life insurance money to make necessary modifications: wheelchair accessibility, safety rails in bathrooms, a commercial kitchen to handle cooking for multiple people. I hired a part-time nurse to be on call. I connected with social services to establish referral partnerships. We called it Richard's House because my husband's love and foresight had made it all possible. He protected me with his will and his planning, even beyond the grave. Now his house would protect others. The first resident was a woman named Dorothy, 73, who'd been living in her daughter's basement and treated worse than I'd been. She arrived with one small suitcase and eyes that gave up hope. "You're safe here," I told her, showing her to a room that was hers alone, spacious and sunny with a real bed and a reading chair. "This is your home for as long as you need it." Dorothy cried when she saw the room. She whispered, "I haven't had my own space in 4 years." Within 6 months, Richard's house had 5 residents: Dorothy, a man named Frank who'd been financially exploited by his grandson, 2 sisters in their 80s who'd been evicted by their nephew, and a woman named Rose whose son-in-law had taken her Social Security checks. We were a family of survivors. We ate meals together, shared our stories, supported each other through the trauma of what we'd endured. We had movie nights and book clubs, real ones, not Tiffany's excuse for day drinking. We celebrated birthdays and holidays. We became the family each of us had lost. Emma from next door became a regular visitor and volunteer. "I should have done more when I heard what was happening to you," she'd said tearfully when I first returned. "You testified for me when it mattered. That was everything." Father Rodriguez from the local Catholic church heard about Richard's house and started bringing donations: clothes, books, a television for the common room. "What you're doing is God's work," he said. I didn't think of it as God's work. I thought of it as Richard's work and my work and the work of everyone who'd been hurt by family members who should have protected them. The day we got our official nonprofit status, I hosted a small celebration. The residents, Grace, Howard, Emma, Father Rodriguez, even Detective Mills came. We toasted with apple cider. Dorothy was in recovery, and we all supported her, and I looked around at the faces of people who'd become my true family. "Richard would be so proud of you," Grace said, hugging me. "I'm proud of me," I said. "For the first time in years, I'm proud of who I am and what I'm doing." That night, alone in my room, I looked at Richard's photo. "We did it," I told him. "We turned something terrible into something good. Victor tried to destroy me, but instead he gave me a purpose I never would have found otherwise." I like to think Richard was smiling somewhere, knowing that his careful planning hadn't just protected me, it had enabled me to protect others. The house that my son tried to steal had become a sanctuary. The money he tried to take was helping people he never cared about, and the mother he tried to break was stronger than she'd ever been. That was the greatest revenge, not his suffering, but my transformation, not his loss, but what I'd built from his cruelty. I turned his attempt to destroy me into the most meaningful chapter of my life.
6 months after Richard's house opened, I got a call that I'd been both expecting and dreading. "Mrs. Chen, this is Melissa Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. I'm calling about your granddaughter, Sarah." Sarah, Victor's daughter. I hadn't seen her since before everything fell apart. Tiffany had made sure of that, inventing excuses why I couldn't see her, claiming I was too confused to babysit.
Now she was 11 years old, and I'd missed years of her life. "What about Sarah?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen are going through some difficulties. Their living situation has become unstable. Sarah's school has reported some concerns. We're looking for alternative placement, and your name came up. I understand you have a facility for elder care, but would you be willing to consider taking in your granddaughter temporarily?" Would I? The little girl I'd barely been allowed to see, the child I'd watched from a distance at school events when Victor didn't know I was there, the granddaughter I'd ached to know? "Yes," I said immediately. "Yes, absolutely. When?" Sarah arrived that afternoon with a social worker, carrying a backpack and wearing an expression of such profound wariness that it broke my heart. She looked like Victor had as a child, but with Tiffany's sharp features. She was too thin, her clothes slightly too small. "Hi, Sarah," I said gently. "I'm your grandmother. I don't know if you remember me." She remembered. "You used to bring me cookies when I was little. Then you stopped coming." I didn't stop wanting to come. I was stopped from coming. But I never stopped thinking about you. Never stopped loving you. She studied me with eyes older than 11. "Dad said you were crazy, that you made up lies about them, and that's why we couldn't see you." Of course he had. "I'm not crazy, sweetheart. What I am is your grandmother, and I'd very much like a chance to get to know you. Would that be okay?" She shrugged, non-committal, but I saw hope flicker in her expression. The social worker, Ms. Rodriguez, pulled me aside. "The situation at their current residence is not good. They're living in a small apartment, both working multiple jobs to pay off debts. Sarah's been coming home to an empty house, making her own meals, falling behind in school. There's no evidence of abuse, but there's definitely neglect." "She'll be safe here," I assured her, "and loved. That's what matters." Integrating an 11-year-old into a house full of elderly trauma survivors was easier than I had expected. The residents fell in love with Sarah immediately, and she with them. Dorothy taught her to knit. Frank helped her with math homework. The sisters, Rose and Lily, played cards with her every evening. Father Rodriguez arranged for her to join the youth group at his church. Sarah blossomed like a flower finally getting sunlight. She gained weight, her clothes fitting better. I'd taken her shopping immediately. Her grades improved. She laughed more. She started calling me Grandma. One evening, about a month after she'd arrived, Sarah came to my room after dinner. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Why did you and Dad stop talking? He said you were mean to them, but everyone here says you're nice. And Ms. Rodriguez said Dad and Mom did something bad to you. What really happened?" I knew this conversation was coming. I chose my words carefully. "Your father and I had a disagreement about how families should treat each other. I believe families should care for each other, support each other, be kind to each other. Your father made some choices that hurt me very badly. And when someone hurts you, even if they're family, sometimes you have to protect yourself by stepping away." "Did he hurt you like—" She hesitated. "Like how he and Mom hurt me?" My blood ran cold. "How did they hurt you, Sarah?" "They didn't hit me or anything," she said quickly, "but they were always angry, always fighting, about money, about you, about everything, and they'd forget about me sometimes. I'd come home from school and there'd be no food, or the power would be off, or they'd be fighting so loud I'd have to hide in my room. Is that hurting?" "Yes, baby," I said, pulling her into a hug. "That's hurting, and I'm so sorry that happened to you." "It wasn't always like that," she said into my shoulder.
When I was little, before we moved in with you, they were different, happier. Then after we left your house, everything got worse. They blamed you, but, pulling back to look at me, I don't think it was your fault. I think they made bad choices, like you said. I met with Ms. Rodriguez the next day. Sarah told me some things that concern me. I relayed the conversation. Ms. Rodriguez made notes. We're already monitoring the situation. Mr. and Mrs. Chen are struggling financially. Apparently, they've had difficulty finding stable employment after the criminal charges became public record. They're meeting minimum standards for visitation, but barely. What happens next? That depends on them and on you. If you're willing to continue as Sarah's placement, we'll recommend extended foster care with the goal of legal guardianship if the parent's situation doesn't improve. I'm willing, I said immediately, more than willing. But won't Victor fight it? Possibly, but Mrs. Chen, between you and me, Mr. Victor Chen's credibility with our agency is not good. His own criminal record for elder abuse, the testimony from the trial, the character witnesses who painted a picture of a man willing to exploit his own mother, all of that works against him. A judge will look at Sarah's improvement in your care versus her decline in theirs. Over the next few months, Victor and Tiffany's visits with Sarah became increasingly sporadic. They'd cancel at the last minute, show up late, or spend the visits complaining about their problems rather than engaging with their daughter. Sarah started asking to cut visits short. Then she started asking if she had to go at all. They just fight, she told me after one particularly difficult visit. Dad kept saying this was all your fault, that you ruined his life, that he should have... She stopped. Should have what? I don't want to say. It was mean. You can tell me, sweetheart. I can handle it. He said he should have put you in a home when he had the chance, that everything would be fine if you just died after Grandpa did. Tears welled in her eyes. That's an awful thing to say, right? I'm not crazy for thinking that's awful. I pulled her close. That's an awful thing to say, and you're not crazy. You're perceptive and kind, and you recognize cruelty when you see it. I'm proud of you for that. At the 6-month review, Ms. Rodriguez recommended that my foster placement be converted to legal guardianship. Victor and Tiffany contested it, of course, but their lawyer advised them to settle. Your clients have attended 4 out of 12 scheduled visitations. Sarah's grades have improved from D's and F's to A's and B's in Mrs. Chen's care. She's gained 15 pounds, all healthy weight. She's thriving. What exactly is your argument for disrupting that? In the end, they agreed to grant me guardianship in exchange for reduced child support. They wanted to see Sarah when convenient, but didn't fight for a formal custody schedule. The day the guardianship was finalized, Sarah asked if she could change her last name to mine. She wanted to be Sarah Chen, like you, not like them. You are like me, I assured her, brave and strong and kind. The name is just a formality, but we filed the paperwork anyway. Sarah deserved to choose her own identity. That night, I sat in Richard's study with his photograph. We have a granddaughter, I told him, really have her. And Richard, she's wonderful. Despite everything, despite her parents, she's turning out wonderful. You'd love her. I liked to think he knew. I liked to think he'd planned for this too, somehow, that his protective love extended not just to me, but to the granddaughter he'd barely gotten to know. Victor had tried to take everything from me. Instead, he'd given me back the one thing I thought I'd lost forever: family. Real family, built on love and choice rather than obligation and blood. That was perhaps the greatest irony of all. A year after Sarah came to live with me, Richard's house received recognition from the state's Adult Protective Services.
We were featured in a news article about innovative solutions to elder abuse, and the story went viral. The attention was overwhelming. My phone, the one I'd gotten from Howard, which had been my lifeline during the worst days, rang constantly with calls from other cities wanting to replicate our model, from elderly people seeking shelter, from donors offering support. We were invited to speak at conferences. Howard handled most of it, but I did some appearances, always bringing Dorothy or Frank or one of the other residents to tell their stories. The personal testimonies were powerful, more powerful than any statistics about elder abuse. At one conference, I ran into someone I'd never expected to see, Tiffany. She was attending with her boss, working as an administrative assistant for a nonprofit that, ironically, dealt with family services. She looked different, older, humbler, less polished than the woman who'd treated me like dirt in my own home. Our eyes met across the convention center lobby. I saw her consider fleeing, but she didn't. She walked over, and to my surprise, she looked ashamed. "Mrs. Chen," she said quietly, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to speak to me, but I need to say this. I'm sorry for everything, for how we treated you, for what we tried to do. I was cruel and greedy, and I have to live with that every day." I studied her. She'd lost weight, not in a healthy way. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes, while professional, were clearly inexpensive. This wasn't the Tiffany who'd barked orders at me. This was someone who'd learned hard lessons. "What happened?" I asked, not unkindly. "Everything fell apart after the trial," she said. "We lost jobs, friends, our reputation. Victor didn't handle it well. He got angry, bitter, blamed everyone but himself. We divorced 6 months ago. I've been trying to rebuild, to become someone better than the person who hurt you." "And Victor?" "Still angry, still bitter, refuses to take any responsibility. He barely sees Sarah. When he does, he uses the time to complain about you, about me, about how unfair everything is." She looked down. "I'm sorry about that, too. Sarah doesn't deserve to hear that." "No, she doesn't," I agreed. "But she's doing well despite it. She's thriving." "I heard. I'm glad. Mrs. Chen, I know I have no right to ask, but could I see her sometimes? Not as a parent, I know I gave that up, but just, I miss her, and I think I could be better for her now than I was before." I considered this. The restraining order had expired. Sarah was old enough to choose, and Tiffany seemed genuinely changed. "I'll ask Sarah," I said. "If she wants to see you, we can arrange supervised visits at first. But Tiffany, if you hurt that child again, emotionally, physically, anyway, I will use every legal resource available to ensure you never see her again. Am I clear?" "Crystal clear," she said. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. You're a better person than I am, than I was. I'm trying to learn from that." I walked away from that conversation feeling strange, not forgiving. I'd never forgive what Victor and Tiffany had done to me, but perhaps understanding. People could change. Some people. Maybe Tiffany was one of them. Sarah, when asked, agreed to see Tiffany. "Just to see if she's different," Sarah said. "Grandma, is that okay? I don't want to hurt you." "You could never hurt me by having compassion," I assured her. "If you want to give her a chance, I support that. Just protect your heart." The visit started slowly. Coffee shops supervised by me, brief conversations. Tiffany was different with Sarah. Attentive, asking questions, actually listening. She apologized to Sarah for the chaos of the previous year, for the fighting, for the neglect. I was so focused on being angry at your grandmother that I forgot to take care of you," Tiffany admitted during one visit. "That was inexcusable. You deserved better." "You both forgot about me," Sarah said with the brutal honesty of children. "You and Dad. You were so busy fighting each other and blaming Grandma that I didn't matter." Tiffany cried then, real tears, not manipulative ones. "You're right, and I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." Over time, the visits expanded. Tiffany took Sarah to movies, to the zoo, to casual lunches. She never overstepped, never tried to undermine my guardianship, never spoke badly about me. She was genuinely trying. Victor never reached out. According to Tiffany, he'd moved to another state, still insisting everyone had wronged him. He sent sporadic child support checks, court-ordered garnishment from his paycheck, but no calls, no visits, no acknowledgement of her daughter's birthday or holidays. He can't face what he did, to you, to Sarah, to himself. He's built this whole narrative where he's the victim, and admitting the truth would destroy that. I felt sad for my son, not sorry, he'd made his choices, but sad that he'd chosen bitterness over growth, resentment over redemption. But I couldn't save him. I could only save the people willing to be saved. Richard's house continued to grow. We expanded to include 8 bedrooms, then 10. We hired more staff. We established partnerships with other organizations. We started a support group for families of elder abuse victims, like Grace, who'd watched helplessly as their loved ones were exploited. On the 2-year anniversary of the day I'd stood up to Victor, we held a celebration at Richard's house. All the residents, past and present, came. Grace, Howard, Emma, Father Rodriguez, Detective Mills, Ms. Rodriguez, even some of Victor and Tiffany's former friends who'd reached out to apologize for their silence during my abuse. Sarah gave a speech. "My grandmother taught me that family isn't just about blood," she read from notes she'd prepared herself. "Family is about who shows up, who fights for you, who loves you even when it's hard. Grandma fights for everyone in this house. She gives them a home when their families failed them, and she gave me a home when my parents couldn't." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. That night, after everyone had left, I sat in Richard's study with Sarah curled up next to me reading a book for school. The house was quiet, peaceful. Dorothy was knitting in the living room. Frank was watching a game. Rose and Lily were doing a puzzle together. This was my family now. Not the family I expected or planned for, but the family I chose and built from the ashes of betrayal. "Grandma," Sarah looked up from her book, "are you happy?" I thought about it. 2 years ago, I was sleeping in a storage closet, treated like a servant, planning my escape. Now I was surrounded by people I loved and who loved me back. I had purpose. I had peace. I had a granddaughter who thrived under my care. "Yes," I said, hugging her close, "I'm very happy." And I meant it, not because everything was perfect, but because I survived. I fought back. I transformed my pain into something meaningful. Victor tried to break me. Instead, he reminded me of my own strength. That was the real victory. 3 years after the confrontation that changed everything, I stood in the expanded Richards house and marveled at what had been built. We now housed 15 residents across 3 properties, the original house and 2 adjacent homes we'd purchased as the program grew. What had started as my personal fight for dignity had become a movement. I was 71 now, still healthy and active, though I'd handed over day-to-day management to a qualified director we'd hired. Grace served on the board, Howard still handled all legal matters pro bono, and Sarah, now 14, volunteered every weekend, helping residents with everything from technology to gardening. The doorbell rang one afternoon, and my receptionist called me to the front office. "Mrs. Chen, there's someone here to see you. He says he's your son." My heart stuttered. Victor! After 3 years of silence, he was here. I almost said to turn him away. The restraining order had long expired, but I had every right to refuse to see him. Instead, curiosity won out. I wanted to see what 3 years had done to him. Victor looked terrible, not just older, but defeated. He'd lost more weight, his expensive suits replaced by cheap, ill-fitting clothes. But it was his eyes that showed the real change. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been shame. "I'm surprised you agreed to see me," he said quietly. "I'm curious," I replied, my voice neutral. "Why are you here, Victor?" "To apologize." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I know it's too late. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need to say it anyway. What I did to you, how I treated you, there's no excuse. I was greedy and cruel, and I deserve everything that happened to me." I waited, saying nothing. "I've been in therapy, real therapy, for 3 years, dealing with what I did, why I did it, who I'd become. My therapist says I should make amends to the people I've hurt, but honestly, Mom, I don't think amends are possible for what I did to you." "Why did you do it?" I asked. "I've spent 3 years trying to understand. Was I such a terrible mother that treating me like a servant seemed reasonable?" "No," his voice cracked. "You were a good mother. The problem was me. After Dad died, I saw an opportunity. I knew about the will, Mom. Howard went over it with me. I knew you owned everything, but I lied to you because I thought I could get away with it. I thought you were vulnerable enough, trusting enough that I could steal from you and you'd never know." "And Tiffany?" "She was worse than me, I think, more actively cruel. But I let it happen. I participated. He swallowed hard. "I treated my own mother like she was nothing, and I can't undo that." We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the house bustled with activity, residents chatting, staff helping, life continuing. "Why now?" I asked finally. 3 years, Victor. You moved away, didn't even call Sarah on her birthday. Why show up now?" "Because I'm dying," he said it matter-of-factly. "Liver cancer. Caught it late. I've got maybe 6 months according to doctors, and I realized I was going to die having never apologized to the person I hurt most in this world." I should have felt something, sadness, sympathy, maybe even vindication. Instead, I felt strangely empty. "I'm not here to ask for forgiveness," Victor continued. "I don't deserve it. I'm not here to reconcile or to have some deathbed redemption. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did, that I'm sorry, and that everything you built here, everyone you've helped, all the good that came from my cruelty, it's more than I deserved, but exactly what you deserved." "Does Sarah know you're sick?" "No, and I'm not going to tell her. She's better off without me in her life. You've been more of a parent to her in 3 years than I was in her whole childhood. I just wanted to see her one more time, even if she doesn't see me." I considered this. "There's a window that looks into the garden. She's out there now planting tomatoes with Dorothy. You can see her from there without disturbing her." Victor's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." I led him to the window. We stood together, watching Sarah laugh with Dorothy, her hands dirty from the garden, looking happy and healthy and loved. "She's beautiful," Victor whispered. "She looks like Mom looked in old photos. Your mom, I mean, my grandmother. She's kind, too, and brave. She's everything good that you and Tiffany could have been if you'd made better choices." "I'm glad she has you. I'm glad you didn't let what I did break you." We stood there for a few more minutes. Then Victor took a deep breath. "I should go.
Thank you for seeing me, Mom, for letting me see her. It's more than I deserved. Victor, I stopped him before he could leave. I can't forgive you. What you did was too cruel, too calculated. But I can tell you this. I hope your remaining time is peaceful. I hope you make your peace with whatever comes next. And I hope that somewhere your father knows you finally understood what you did wrong. He nodded, unable to speak. Then he left, and I never saw him again. 2 weeks later, Tiffany called to tell me Victor had been hospitalized. She told me about his visit with you. He died knowing his mother had heard his apology. That gave him peace. I thought you should know. The funeral was small. I didn't attend. Some wounds don't heal enough for that, but I sent flowers. Sarah asked if she wanted to go. Not to mourn him, but to say goodbye to who he could have been. I understood that. I took her and we stood at the back during the service. Afterwards, Sarah put a flower on the casket. "Goodbye, Dad," she said softly. "I wish you'd been different." That night, Sarah asked me a question. "Grandma, when you die, will I lose this house too? Will I have to leave all the residents?" "No, sweetheart," I assured her. "The house is held in trust. It will continue operating long after I'm gone, and I've set up a fund to ensure you're taken care of, college paid for, everything. But more than that, I've set it up so that when you're older, if you want to, you can run Richard's house yourself. You can continue the work. I'd like that, helping people like you helped them, like you helped me." I pulled her close. "You don't have to decide now, but yes, if you want, this legacy can be yours to carry forward. Years from now, when I'm gone, this is what I want people to remember. Not that I was abused by my son, not that I was nearly robbed of my home and my freedom, but that I survived, that I fought back, that I transformed my pain into purpose and my suffering into sanctuary for others. Richard's house will stand as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Every elderly person who finds refuge here, every family healed from abuse, every person who learns they deserve dignity and respect, that's the legacy." Victor tried to write my ending. He tried to make me the helpless victim of my own story, but I took back the pen. I wrote a different ending. And it's an ending full of life, love, purpose, and peace. I think about Richard often, about the careful planning that made all this possible. "You protected me even after you were gone," I tell his photograph. "You made sure I could protect others. You gave me not just survival, but the means to thrive." Grace asked me recently if I ever regretted having Victor, knowing what he'd become. "No," I said honestly, "because without Victor, I wouldn't have Sarah, and I wouldn't have learned the lesson I needed to learn, that the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born into, that love is shown through actions, not just words, that sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the greatest triumph. I'm an old woman now, but I've never felt more alive. Every morning I wake up in my own home, really mine, indisputably mine, surrounded by people who've chosen to be my family. Every day I see the difference this house makes in lives that were broken. Every day is a victory over the son who tried to destroy me. This is my revenge, not his suffering, but my joy, not his punishment, but my purpose, not his downfall, but my rise. I survived, I thrived, I transformed, and nothing Victor did, no cruelty he inflicted, could take that away from me. This is my legacy, Richard's house, Sarah's future, and the unbreakable strength of a woman who refused to be a victim. This is my story, and I'm the one who gets to write the ending.